Legal expert urges Ripple to unlock XRP tokens faster. Let me ask you something real quick. If you found out that the asset you have been holding for years, an asset you genuinely believe in, could reach its full potential almost a decade sooner than currently planned, simply because one company decided to turn a dial, would you want to know about it? Because that is exactly what is on the table right now with XRP, and a legal expert with serious credibility just made the case publicly. Welcome to XRP Financial Horizon. My name is your host, and today we are getting into something that has the community talking loudly, and for good reason. Stick with me through this video because the data we are going to walk through changes how you think about XRP's supply picture entirely. Here is the raw context first, because I want you to understand the size of what we are dealing with. Right now, in June 2026, somewhere between 32 and 38 billion XRP tokens are sitting locked inside Ripple's escrow program, not in the open market, not available to traders or institutions, just held in time-locked contracts on the XRP ledger. For reference, the total circulating supply sits at roughly 61.85 billion XRP. That means a full third of the available supply is still on the sidelines. And based on current distribution behavior, independent analysts estimate it could take close to 9 more years before that final batch of escrowed XRP fully enters circulation. 9 years is a long runway, and whether that is a feature or a flaw depends entirely on who you ask. The escrow program itself was designed back in December 2017 for a straightforward reason: credibility. Ripple originally controlled a massive share of XRP's total supply, and the market was understandably nervous about what that meant for price stability. So Ripple locked 55 billion XRP into 55 separate escrow contracts, each releasing 1 billion tokens on the first day of a new month. The design was transparent and programmable, which gave institutional investors and large partners the ability to model supply expectations. That predictability was not an accident. It was a deliberate trust-building mechanism, and for what it was designed to do, it worked. The question being raised now is whether that same structure still makes sense in 2026, when Ripple's business looks fundamentally different from what it looked like nearly a decade ago. Bill Morgan is the one asking that question most pointedly right now. For anyone not familiar, Morgan is a pro-XRP attorney and commentator who has been deeply engaged in the legal and economic arguments around XRP for years. He is not a Twitter personality who discovered crypto 6 months ago. His analysis tends to be grounded, structured, and legally informed. So when he posted on X on June 21st saying that Ripple should release more of that monthly billion and stop relocking so much back into new escrow contracts, people paid attention. His core point is this: the faster XRP reaches full circulation, the faster the market can price it without the psychological weight of future supply uncertainty pressing down on it. That logic is worth examining closely, because the data actually supports it more than you might expect. Here is what Ripple's monthly behavior actually looks like in practice, and this is where the retention of supply becomes really visible. Every month, Ripple unlocks 1 billion XRP through the scheduled escrow release. But historically, the company has been returning somewhere between 700 and 900 million of those tokens straight back into new escrow contracts. That means the net new supply entering circulation each month is often just 100 to 300 million XRP, sometimes even less. On June 1st of this year, Ripple unlocked 1 billion XRP across 3 separate transactions worth over $1.33 billion at the time of execution, and then returned a substantial portion right back to escrow. That pattern has been consistent for years. So when people hear 1 billion XRP released, they should understand that the actual market impact is a fraction of that headline number. The real question Morgan is raising is why the fraction needs to stay this small. Now here is the part that connects directly to XRP's long-term value case, and I want you to stay with me here because this is where the supply argument gets genuinely interesting. Morgan describes a fully circulating XRP supply as the path toward XRP becoming what he calls hard money. That phrase carries a specific meaning. Hard money is an asset with a fixed or fully transparent supply that the market can evaluate without guessing about future dilution. Bitcoin's entire value proposition as a store of value is built on this concept. 21 million coins, no exceptions, ever. XRP already has a fixed total supply of 100 billion tokens. No new coins are ever created. But the escrow system means the market has been pricing in an asset where a third of the supply is still controlled and drip-fed by one company. The moment that supply is fully out, all of it in open circulation, XRP's market behavior could shift in ways that are hard to fully model right now. But the direction of that shift is something Morgan and others believe would be positive. Let's talk about supply overhang because it is a concept that does not get explained clearly enough in most XRP discussions, and understanding it helps you see why Morgan's argument has real weight. Supply overhang refers to the market perception that a large amount of an asset could enter circulation at some point in the future, creating a ceiling on price confidence. Even if Ripple never actually dumps its entire escrow into the market, the fact that it theoretically could, or that it will continue trickling supply in for years, creates a kind of invisible pressure on XRP's price ceiling. Institutional investors especially are sensitive to this. If you are a treasury manager at a major bank deciding whether to hold XRP as a cross-border payment asset, one of your risk factors is supply dilution. A fully circulated supply removes that risk factor from the equation entirely. Morgan's argument is essentially that Ripple has the ability to close that chapter much sooner than the current pace suggests. At this point, you might be wondering, what does Ripple itself say about all this? The company has not directly responded to Morgan's specific post, but former Chief Technology Officer David Schwartz, known in the community as Joel Katz, has previously addressed the broader escrow timeline question, and his comments are revealing. Schwartz acknowledged openly that predicting the escrow end date is genuinely difficult because it depends on how much XRP Ripple uses each month, which varies based on operational needs, institutional partnerships, and business strategy. He also made the point that Ripple's activities with XRP extend well beyond the escrow release schedule itself. The company can do a wide range of things with XRP that affect the market regardless of how the escrow mechanics play out month to month. That is an honest and nuanced answer, but it also essentially confirms that the distribution timeline is flexible, which is exactly the opening Morgan is pointing to. There is another layer to this conversation that is worth understanding if you want to see the full picture. Ripple's business in 2026 is not the same company it was in 2018 or even 2022. CEO Brad Garlinghouse has spoken publicly about targeting a $1 billion revenue run rate by the end of this year, and that revenue is being built on a diversified stack: stablecoins, custody services, treasury management tools, and cross-border payment infrastructure. The company is not solely dependent on selling escrowed XRP to fund its operations the way it may have been in earlier years. That changes the calculus. If Ripple no longer needs to hold tens of billions of tokens in reserve to sustain its business operations, the argument for maintaining the current slow distribution pace becomes harder to defend. Morgan appears to be reading the company's financial trajectory and concluding that the escrow cushion is less necessary than it once was. But I want to give you both sides here because intellectually honest analysis means acknowledging the counter-argument. There is a legitimate case to be made for Ripple's current approach, and a meaningful portion of the XRP community actually prefers it. The argument goes like this: predictability is one of XRP's strongest selling points for institutional adoption. Large financial institutions building products around XRP, payment corridors, liquidity solutions, cross-border settlement infrastructure, need to be able to model supply dynamics with confidence. The current escrow schedule, even if it is slow, gives those institutions a structured and transparent framework. Any significant change to that schedule, even if well-intentioned, introduces short-term uncertainty. And in the world of institutional finance, uncertainty is priced in as risk, which means a faster release schedule could actually slow institutional engagement in the short run before it accelerates it in the long run. There is also the pure price mechanics argument that some traders raise, and it cannot be completely brushed aside. If Ripple increases the net monthly supply entering circulation, say, from 200 million XRP per month to 500 million or more, and demand does not rise at the same pace, you get downward pressure on price. That is not a complicated concept. More tokens chasing the same pool of buyers means each token commands a lower price at the margin. The counter to this is that the demand side of XRP's equation is also expanding. Institutional adoption, payment corridor growth, stablecoin activity on the XRP ledger, and broader market maturity all represent demand vectors that could absorb higher supply without price deterioration. But that balance is not guaranteed, and investors who are sensitive to price in the near term have a reasonable concern here. One proposal that came up in community discussions goes much further than what Morgan is suggesting, burning Ripple's escrow entirely. The idea would be to permanently destroy the remaining locked supply, removing it from existence forever. Instantly, XRP's maximum supply would drop by tens of billions, and theoretically, the price would respond accordingly. Schwartz addressed this directly, and his answer was instructive. He pointed to Stellar, which burned a significant portion of its XLM supply and saw a sharp but short-lived price reaction before the market normalized. His conclusion was that a supply burn produces a temporary emotional response in markets rather than a durable structural shift in value. So the burn option appears to be off the table from Ripple's perspective, which narrows the conversation back to distribution pace, exactly the territory Morgan is working in. Here is what the data situation actually looks like when you pull it all together, and I want you to hold on to this because it frames everything else. The XRP ledger currently shows roughly 61.85 billion XRP in active circulation. The escrow balance sits somewhere around 32 to 38 billion XRP, depending on the most recent relock activity. At the historical average net release of 200 to 300 million XRP per month, you are looking at somewhere between 9 and 15 years to fully empty the escrow at the low end of distribution. Even at the higher end, if Ripple starts releasing 500 million net per month, you are still talking 5 to 6 years. Morgan is not claiming this can be resolved overnight. He is saying the pace can be meaningfully accelerated, and that the benefits to XRP's long-term credibility as a monetary asset are worth prioritizing over the comfort of a slow, familiar schedule. What sits underneath all of this, if you zoom out far enough, is a fundamental question about what kind of asset XRP is supposed to become. Is it a utility token that functions primarily as a bridge currency for cross-border payments, in which case steady, measured supply distribution makes operational sense? Or is it aiming for something broader, a reserve-grade monetary asset that can sit alongside gold, Bitcoin, and other fixed supply instruments in institutional portfolios? Because if the answer is the latter, then supply transparency is not just a preference, it is a prerequisite. Morgan seems to believe XRP can and should be aiming for that second category, and his escrow argument flows directly from that belief. Whether Ripple's leadership shares that vision in full, and whether that vision translates into a policy shift on escrow distribution, is the part we do not have a clear answer to yet. So where does this leave you as someone watching XRP's trajectory right now? Pay attention to Ripple's monthly relock numbers. Every time a new escrow cycle runs, the amount that gets returned versus the amount that stays in circulation is a real signal about the company's internal priorities. If you start seeing that relock number shrink, if Ripple is retaining 600 million instead of 800 million, or 400 million instead of 600 million, that would be a concrete sign that Morgan's argument is gaining traction behind the scenes, even if Ripple never makes a formal announcement about it. That is the number to watch. Not the headline unlock figure of 1 billion per month, but the net retention number that tells you how much supply is actually moving. That single data point may be one of the most underanalyzed metrics in all of XRP investing right now. Stay with XRP Financial Horizon. We will keep tracking it. Subscribe, leave your take in the comments, and we will see you in the next one.